All right, Adam, there's one problem that I get from a lot of people that they try to plan things, but then the outcomes don't come out right. They're trying to plan events, build these big plans for making change, and nothing seems to fall together. We use a different program, though, that what a lot of people think of. We use a kind of this like program theory, strategic planning framework that kind of flips everything on its head because we start the opposite. People say like, I'm going to do this, when really you should say, this is what will happen.
Right.
Dive me into that.
Yeah. So, kind of what it's collectively called and known as in our organization is program theory. And the reason that I love it is because the kind of tagline that we use is starting with the end in mind. What is the end goal that we have as a group, as an individual, as concerned citizens to make us better, look at our goal, look at what we're trying to achieve. And a lot of times when I travel around the country, just like you, I run into these people that are like, I've got some folks, they're really motivated, we're really fired up about this, but we just can't get the ball rolling. And I always ask them, what is it that you're trying to achieve? What is that big capital V vision that you're trying to achieve? They say, well, we want to have this go on, or we want to get more people registered to vote, or we want to host a candidate forum, or we want someone to run for office, whatever it is. I say, well, that's where you need to start. So that's what program theory is starting with the end in mind, getting that capital V vision that everyone can buy into, and then beginning to move towards that goal. The kind of example that I use whenever I'm explaining this is, take any sports dynasty that there is. At the beginning of the year, they circle one date on their calendar, and that's the championship date, right? We want to be playing in that championship for the chance to win the title. That is everyone's goal. That's the end, and they are starting with that end in mind. Way before spring practices start, way before any trades are made, anything like that, they say, here's our date. That's where we need to be at the end of this season. And then they start working backwards, right? Okay, so what are the inputs that we're going to need? What are the exercises that we're going to have to take into account? Are we going to have to trade for certain players? Do we need a new head coach? What are those inputs that we're going to need in order to achieve that? And that's how I tell people to start, because a lot of times they're like, well, I've got the people. I think, this is what's going to tier up to that. But then I'm saying all throughout the step, are we going to tier towards each of these? Is everything that we're doing leading towards that end goal? And if not, why are we doing it?
Right. That's the thing. When you have a specific date and you're talking election day or in the sports, the championship game, your biggest limiting factor is time. You only have so many days.
Yeah.
So if you have a city council vote and you know that city council vote is in 6 weeks and you need 3 out of 5 to vote your way, everything you do for those next 6 weeks needs to be focused on flipping those 3 city council members.
Right. And this is going back to that idea of smart goals. We might talk about that later, but one of the first two steps of that are they specific? Is this goal specific? And then is it measurable? Like, how are we going to be able to measure it? So in your case with the city council vote, we need 3 of the 5 voters to vote our way. That is measurable. We cannot do it with 2. It'd be great if we had 4. It'd be great if it was unanimous, but that's our measurable number. We need 3 of these people. So then going back, what are the inputs? What are those other factors that lead up to that? And so you could say, well, this person over here, Joe Smith, is going to be a no vote regardless. There's no amount of pressure that we can put on him. He has been in here forever. His constituents like him. There's no way. But these are 3 people that we could possibly sway. And so then what are those activities that we need to do? So the inputs are those 3 votes that we've measured to get to a yes vote on the date that they vote, the election day.
Mm-hmm.
Then the activities are knocking in their neighborhood, maybe putting out mailers, maybe recruiting more people. Those are the activities. Just like with your sports team, the activities are, well, we're going to be practicing to play against this team. These are the teams that we know are going to be possibly vying for a championship. How do we best match up with them? How do we put our players in the best situation to do that? So if you're recruiting volunteers, how do I best put my volunteers in a situation where they can succeed? And what are those activities that we can do to be successful? And
This is
then,
also where your 5-10-20 rule comes into
yeah,
play,
yeah.
because at the same time, you're saying, how do I reach out to this person? And if you need to have an event, you need to get your 20 together. You need to get those 20 people that can vote for that person to come out and take an action for you. Or
Yeah.
maybe you realize we have a very tight connection with someone, one of those 5 people that can always get them to answer the phone, that will reach out for you. And there's one done right there.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes you have to 5-10-20 rule, and you could say, this one, we need to have an event. With this one, we need a door knock. And this one, we have a friend. We have a friend of a friend that will advocate for us.
Right. So to give you an example, I was working recently and I asked them, what is your end goal? And they were like, well, we need to knock 10,000 doors. I said, okay, but what are you knocking those 10,000 doors for? A lot of times people get caught on that last step. They say they think that the outputs are the outcome. I said, no, that's an output that you need. The outcome, why is it that you're knocking those 10,000 doors? Well, it's because we're trying to shift the paradigms of people here in the community. We're trying to increase awareness for a candidate. We're trying to do that. I said, that's what your outcome is. That's your goal. That's where
Mhm.
you're starting. That's your end goal. Now work it backwards. What are the outputs that you're going to need for that? Okay, well, we're going to need to knock 10,000 doors. We're going to need to recruit, the 5 of the 5, 10, 20 to go and actually talk to those people. We're going to need people to show up to testify on the date that the city council votes on this. Those are all our outputs. Okay, well, what activities do we need to do to then get to that? Okay, well, we need to recruit volunteers and knock doors. We need to host, luncheons and coffees to talk about why this is an important issue, to educate people. We need to get, our 5 people, our 10 people, our 20 people all moving in the direction they need to be going to reach our outputs. And then what are the inputs that we're going to need? Well, we're going to need a door knocking app. We're going to need flyers. We're going to need mailers. We're going to need all these things to help this. We're going to need to recruit volunteers. And so when you work backwards, it better helps you tone in on that vision. So every time you're taking a step back, you're saying, this is tearing up to this. This is tearing up to our ultimate goal of getting those 3 people to vote on this.
See, that's what I love about this program theory, is that by flipping it on its head, like, we all know door knocking, that deep canvassing, personally connecting with people works better than anything else. Having events in person works better than anything else. But do we need to do it? If we go look back and say, all right, we're great door knockers, we're great at coffee hours, we're going to do a whole bunch of those. They might not be tearing up. They might not be what the people we're trying to influence or our outcome needs. So if we're only looking at those things, what we can do well, we're not going to look at what's going to be successful.
It's easier now than ever to see, is what we're doing actually tearing towards that. So our connect rate at our doors, we're knocking all the doors that we need. We're knocking 10,000 doors, but we only got a 10% connect rate. So then that allows you to go back and say, well, actually, we need to reevaluate our inputs. We
Right.
need better canvassers at the doors. The canvassers that we have, they're knocking those 10,000 doors, but that's not ever going to get us there because they're only talking to 1,000 people. And
Right.
we
Are we
need
canvassing at the right time of day? Are we doing on the right day of the week? So, Adam, we've done this for groups. We've met with freedom, liberty loving groups all over the country to do this specific training. GLA, we've done this with our state teams before. I've had a ton of fun working with our states, and really, I get amped up to help other people make something happen, something that they love. So this is a ton of fun. But this is also in one of our certifications, right?
So this is actually in our Grassroots Mobilizer certification.
Okay.
And the things that you can learn in there are how to actually mobilize. So you'll take this, and we put it out very practically throughout the certification and allow you to write down, what's that outcome that I want to achieve? What are the outputs that I'm going to need to achieve that outcome? What are the activities that I'm going to have to take, and writing all that out? What are the inputs that I need to achieve those activities, to achieve the outputs, and then ultimately to reach my goal, the final outcome? And I think it's one of the best opportunities for you as an activist to sit down, go through, and really start to map it. Because a lot of times, until you put it on paper, it's ideas in your head, and that's what a lot of people have.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks, Adam. We'll see
Yeah.
everyone next week.
See you next week.